This is part 3 of my presentation about Star Wars. The first 2 videos have covered everything up to and including the morality in Star Wars. This time I'm going to talk about the philosophy of Star Wars. What is the universe in Star Wars like? And what's different about it? Let's begin by going back to what the story of Star Wars is all about. Star Wars is a story about freedom. Freedom is an important idea. It's something we all need to have. The question is, why would somebody want to take it away from us? I think it's because some people think that other people's freedom is not in their interests. They might also think it isn't in our interests too, but I suspect it's mostly the former. Some people want to control others and have them obeyed because they think that's in their best interests. Others think that freedom is in everyone's best interests. So there exists the possibility for conflict, in fiction and in real life too. In the first film we were introduced to the characters of C-3PO and R2-D2. Their roles seem to be to narrate the story, or at least some of it. In doing so, C-3PO says many philosophical things. R2-D2 even calls him a mindless philosopher at one point, implying that robots in the Star Wars universe are machines and do not have minds or souls. When we first meet C-3PO, he is very pessimistic. In all 3 films he says we are doomed at some point. Presumably the purpose of this is to express the seriousness of the situation and emphasise how difficult things are for the rebels. Here's an important clip from the beginning of episode 4.
Did you hear that? They shut down the main reactors. We'll be destroyed for sure. This is madness.
When C-3PO says this is madness, I suspect he is not just talking about their current situation. I'm tempted to conclude that what he is really saying is that evil is madness. In other words, it's a fundamental statement about the nature of things in the Star Wars universe. I'll come back to the question of evil a little bit later, towards the end of this video. In another early scene, we see 3PO take an oil bath. In response to the pleasure this brings him, he says, "Thank the Maker." This is the only reference to any kind of creator in Star Wars. Maybe it's because how the Star Wars universe was created isn't relevant to the story. I think that's true of real life too. For the most part, the question of where we came from isn't relevant. It's where we are going that matters. There's a great scene on the Millennium Falcon in which R2-D2 is playing a game of something that resembles chess against Chewbacca. R2-D2 appears to be winning and Chewbacca gets angry. Han points out that it isn't wise to make a Wookiee angry. 3PO agrees and suggests that R2-D2 changes his strategy. This illustrates the idea that flexibility and change are an important part of how we deal with problems in life. Later, the Emperor wants Luke to change his strategy so that he will be turned to the dark side. Luke eventually has to do so, but he stays in control and doesn't turn, unlike his father who did. Things are different at the start of episode 5. Let's have another clip.
Sir, all the patrols are in. Still no contact from Skywalker Solo.
Mistress Leia, R2 says he's been quite unable to pick up any signals, although he does admit that his own range is far too weak to abandon all hope.
Your Highness, there's nothing more we can do tonight. The shield doors must be closed. Close the doors.
Yes, sir.
R2 says the chances of survival are 725 to 1. Actually, R2 has been known to make mistakes. From time to time. Dear, oh dear. Don't worry about Master Luke. I'm sure he'll be all right. He's quite clever, you know, for a human being.
So episode 5 starts just like episode 4 ended, with the rebels in an optimistic frame of mind. Of course, we know that won't last long because the film is called The Empire Strikes Back. I think the character of C-3PO is being used here to convey the emotional state the audience should be feeling. Later on in each film, he doesn't do that as much. I now want to talk about some of the more serious aspects of the films. I've already mentioned freedom, but the Jedi also want peace and justice. As Ben explains, the Jedi Knights were the guardians of peace and justice in the Old Republic. Star Wars is telling us we should build our societies based on these 3 principles. Freedom doesn't really work unless you have peace and justice too. These ideas come partly from the Jedi's understanding of their religion. What is this religion, this force? Well, it's a source of supernatural power, the only source of supernatural power. It is an eternal force. The force will be with you always. It has something to do with destiny, and it's very powerful. We are told the power to destroy a planet is insignificant next to the power of the force. The force isn't merely a supernatural concept, though. You can feel it. It works through your instincts and your feelings or emotions. If you take away the supernatural, the force has many real-life aspects. It's our passion for life, our determination to get what we want, our empathy with others, our skills and abilities, and our knowledge and understanding. There's one more thing that the force is. It's very practical and pragmatic. We should have a clip for this.
You must learn the ways of the Force if you're to come with me to Alderaan.
Alderaan? I'm not going to Alderaan. I've got to get home. It's late. I'm in for it as it is.
I need your help, Luke. She needs your help. I'm getting too old for this sort of thing.
I can't get involved. I've got work to do. It's not that I like the Empire. I hate it, but there's nothing I can do about it right now. It's such a long way from here.
That's your uncle talking.
Boy, my uncle. How am I ever going to explain this?
Learn about the Force, Luke.
Look, I can take you as far as Anchorhead. You can get a transport there to Mos Eisley or wherever you're going.
You must do what you feel is right, of course.
So let's look at some of the practical aspects in Star Wars. Patience. Both sides in the conflict value patience. Ben and Yoda tell Luke to be patient, and the Emperor tells Vader to be patient too. Friendship. We all need allies to help us achieve what we want. Friendship is one-sided on the dark side, though. The Emperor calls Vader his friend, but Vader calls the Emperor his master. Presumably everyone else in the Empire are treated as slaves. Change is a common theme on both sides of the Force. Luke becomes stronger, wiser, and more confident as time goes by. Events have an effect on Vader too. At the start of Episode 4, he kills a captured rebel without showing any mercy. At the end of Episode 5, he doesn't kill anyone. Reality. There is a blink and you'll miss it moment when Luke is on Dagobah for the first time in Episode 5. He doesn't know why he is there, and it is a very alien world to him, so he says to the audience that it is like something out of a dream. We don't know for sure if he's talking about Dagobah or the whole of the Star Wars universe. Is Star Wars just a dream? What about real life? Is that a dream too? There are fragments of philosophy scattered throughout the films. Some of them are quite deep, some are puzzling, and others are fairly straightforward. Here are a few of them for you to digest. To finish this section, I want to have a look at a couple of fundamental aspects of Star Wars philosophy. We learn something fundamental about Vader's character when he is fighting Luke for the first time. He says to Luke, "With our combined strength, we can end this destructive conflict and bring order to the galaxy." In other words, bringing order to the galaxy is what Vader really wants. His evil ways are actually only a means to this end. We also learn a little bit about the nature of good and evil. The Emperor says good a number of times in the final battle with Luke. The suggestion is that evil doesn't really exist. Evil is simply a very warped sense of what is and what isn't good. Overall, Star Wars is an optimistic story. It is a story about hope. Things may not be going so well, but things can change. Things can and do get better. It may not be easy though, so you have to keep at it. Remember, the Force will be with you always.